and Drink Show. Dads and Drink Show.
Hey, we are very thrilled tonight to be bringing you. You can see my tongue's already loose. This is gonna be great. To be bringing you our first guest on the Dads and Drink Show. Everyone, welcome Noah Healy to the Dads and Drink Show. How are you, Noah?
I'm doing great.
We're doing something on this show. And I don't think we actually discussed what I think it's like this is what growing up is. Like the dads are trying to learn something. So that's why we brought Noah on. Noah Healy was a guest on the Jeff Macolino podcast, by the way. I should have known what episode. I'm going to say 116. I don't know if that's correct, but somewhere around there. Go check out that episode. Hey, but first, we're going to start with a segment, I don't know why I'm so concerned whether I'm going to hell or not, because I think, frankly, most people assume I already am, if there is such a thing. So this one I feel like is pretty innocuous, but it was also one of those things like, I'm not sure. So we're going to the text messages again. So this was a meme I got from a friend. And I'm a sucker for anything Margot Robbie or Sylvester Stallone, to be quite honest. But so that's fine. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Here was my response, and this is where I need to ask whether I'm going to hell for this. Trust me, the single ones still look like that. I mean,
I think you're safe on this one. I think you're safe.
I mean, I'm not trying to be one of those dads who's like on the prowl. But,
that's good.
there you go. So I'm not, but also at the same time, it's like, oh God, I wish my kids would have a single teacher that was attractive, because then I'd be like, look at what a great dad I am. Is the idea of like, an easy way to pick up a good lady would be if she was teaching. Okay, and maybe I'm going to hell for this. If she was teaching my son, because he's a great student and a very respectful kid, if she was teaching my daughter, she would hate me off the bat. Maybe that's why I'm going to. I don't know. I feel conflicted about this.
There's Foley, one of the kids in the hall. Dave, is that his name? Dave Foley?
Dave Foley.
He's got a bit about that, actually. So apparently he's essentially been exiled from Canada because his wife divorced him while news radio was on. And that meant that the level of alimony that he was in for exceeds any level of income he can generate if he goes back. But there's a bit from him, and I don't know if it's before or after the divorce. I saw this thing of him like on the improv stage or something, where he was talking about the fact that he had encountered a young, like 19-year-old Uma Thurman at one point, and they'd been out drinking with like the whole crew, and it got down to just the two of them, and she basically offered to extend the evening, and he said, "Well, I'm married," and turned her down. And the function of the bit is that he would like credit for that, like that.
Yes,
right, yeah. That's.
I'm gonna look up that bit, by the way.
So this makes me think, though, Jeff. Like, if I look back, I think we all had a teacher in high school that pretty much across the board, like, guys thought was attractive, right? I mean, like there was one teacher.
I did in high school.
No, maybe not high school. I know in middle school I did. In middle school, I had a super hot like homeroom.
In my high school, there were male teachers who all the females liked. Not the other way around, I don't think.
So I'd like to have that look back. Like when you go to your class reunion, it would just be nice to have a sort of updated timeline of the teacher. let's see if Miss
See how
sixth
she
grade
looks in the
teacher,
nursing home.
right? Yeah,
25
let's see
years
how
later.
she's held this out, right? Is she still rocking it at 60? Like, now let's put this in perspective.
I feel like she should be put in a time capsule. We could see what she looks like when we're age appropriate for each other, and then be like, "Huh, I was just a horny teenager."
What?
There's many things I'm going to hell for, but
So my last note on this is I always wonder too, is like, it seems like nowadays you always hear about students hooking up with teachers, right? I mean, it seems like all the time this is happening in some world. Do you think that used to happen during our time, but there just wasn't as much
No.
media and internet and things? I mean,
I've got two theories. One is social media makes it easier to do all this stuff, right?
mhm.
The other is I'm guessing, and I could be completely wrong. I went to a Catholic school the whole way, and I had one teacher in first grade, and I remember, I kind of thought she was cute and she was young, but most of my teachers were old, or
Okay.
they were not old, but I considered them at that point old. Like, they weren't like 23-year-olds fresh out of college teaching my 10-year-old self who was about to explore my own body.
So wait, is your theory going to be that teachers have just gotten hotter? 'Cause
No, they've
that's a
gotten
really
younger.
bad-
I think
Okay,
they've
younger.
gotten younger.
I live in a college town that actually has a renowned teaching school. And one of the consequences of that is that quite a lot of my classes had students earning teaching experience as teaching assistants. And generally speaking, the educational track is at the sort of easy end of the collegiate experience. And UVA is a top end school, so pots for jocks, that kind of thing. And so the education would gather up female athletes, cheerleaders, that sort of stratum of the school as a overrepresented subset, which means that I really have no idea what sort of the average teacher is supposed to
Right.
look like.
I had no idea you were in Wahoo Nation, man. Charlottesville is a fantastic little town because UVA is a tremendous school, but the town itself has an older feel, or at least it used to. I lived in Fredericksburg and I spent a lot of time there.
Jeremiah was there was a tiki torch a few years back.
Yeah. Am I going to hell? No. But look,
yes.
but there was that old school feel. Like, I feel like there was a tiny theater and little mom and pop places. Like, it was cool.
Yeah. There's still a few of those things around. We are sort of gradually losing them, as you might imagine. But I remember a company I worked for was multi-state, and we had people from Oklahoma come to like an all hands conference, basically, just so we could get to know each other. And so I took them on a tour of the downtown mall and environs, and like our court seat was designed by Thomas Jefferson. And there's a corner that's been there since before the Revolutionary War, which was like the trading corner, was sort of the original foundation of the town, and stuff like that. And they were just sort of like looking around with their mouths open, because in Oklahoma, buildings that are more than 50 years old are some kind of ancient history that nobody's ever heard of before. And in Charlottesville, like,
Yeah.
I grew up in one. I'm living in a different one. Like, we got a lot of that around here.
Nobody's going to hell, at least from this conversation, unless you had a tiki torch. But let's get going here. We've got Noah's here to teach us some things, and I'm gonna play a clip to preface this segment, because I think Jeremiah and I have at least both been here with this.
That's not the way you're supposed to do it, Dad. They want us to do it.
I
this
don't
way.
know that way. Why would they change math? Math is
Dad,
is math.
I'll just wait for Mom to get back.
What? Well, she won't understand it any better than I do.
So Noah, math is not just math, right?
Well, no, math is just math, but there's way more of it than we're aware of. For a little trip to the outskirts of mathematics, I could teach you guys how to count past infinity.
I wasn't aware that you could even go past infinity. Like I thought that was the single dog, double dog, triple dog there. Like when you got to infinity, I thought it was done. So my mind's already blown.
I know a lot of chicks with the infinity tattoo, and I'd love to be able to have a punchline. I can count past that.
Well, so I'll try to keep this vocabulary light, but are you guys familiar with cardinality and ordinality, or cardinal and ordinal numbers? Okay.
All right. Now you know the level you're in.
Right. This isn't that big a deal. So basically numbers have two properties. Numbers describe an amount of stuff, and they also describe an order of stuff. So you could have one of something, or you could be first. You could have two of something, you could be second. And so it's sort of interesting that we can basically use the same symbols to mean both of these things, because if you think about it, they're not really that similar a thing to one another.
And which one's which?
Cardinality is amounts.
Okay.
And ordinality is orders.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I probably should have known that one. First dumb question.
Look, Jeff, you're killing the curve on the grading, man. I mean, we're way all right. Sorry.
I'm that annoying kid in math class, so you're like, come on, man.
Well, the ordinal numbers also sound like they're ordinary, which is unfortunately a little misleading because they're the really weird ones. And it's the ordinal numbers that we're going to be concentrating on. But as a quick little exercise, we're going to talk about cardinality for a little bit and think about amounts. And so one of the tricks we can do, if we can't count, we can still match things up. So if I want to know if the number of chairs is equal to the number of guests, I could have everybody sit down. And if there's empty chairs left over, then there's more chairs. If there's guests that can't sit down, then there's more guests. So there's this trick I can do with cardinal numbers to describe the cardinality of sets, the size of sets of things, to decide whether they're bigger and smaller. And the trick is, if I can match everything up and it all matches, and I basically, then they're the same size. This trick keeps working even if the sets are infinitely big.
Okay.
And so there's this mental exercise. You ever heard of the infinite hotel? So imagine you're the clerk of a hotel that has an infinite number of rooms. They're all full. Somebody comes and says, hey, I want a room. Can you give them one? Well, the answer is yes, you can, because you can send out an announcement to everybody to go one room up, and then you can give that guy the first room, and that's it. Let's say an infinite number of people show up and want rooms. Can you give them rooms? Well, yes, you can. You can tell everybody to go to the room number twice their room. Now all the odd rooms are empty. You can tell these guys to all go to the odd rooms.
Okay.
So in the cardinal sense, 2 infinities is the same size as 1 infinity because they match up.
Makes sense.
So this infinite hotel is kind of like the universe, right? I mean, it's ever expanding. No. It's way bigger than the universe, and it's way smaller than what we're going to be talking about.
Right, because infinite has no cap, right? I mean, infinite is infinite.
It certainly does. And so now let's get into the race. We're going to think about ordinal numbers. And so we're going to think about the numbers racing each other, and their position will be their value.
Right.
Okay.
So 1 is first, 2 is second, a million comes in a millionth. Your favorite 14-digit number, whatever that is, that's where it shows up. Everybody has a favorite 14-digit number, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have it tattooed
It's
on my lower
666.
back.
So anyhow, this gives us a picture of how to kind of think about sets. And if we could cut this race off at any number, and we'd have a cardinal set that would be that big. So if we had 10 numbers, we'd have a cardinal set with 10 numbers. So if we put all the numbers into this race, we'd have a cardinal set that has every single what's known as counting number, 1 through. And we could talk about the natural numbers. We could actually start with 0. So 0 would actually have first place. First would be in second place, and so on.
Okay.
But
Don't
let's go with
forget
the
0.
counting numbers. So 1's first, 2's second. Now we can have a second race. We've run one race, put all the numbers in order. We can now run a second race. We can put one number in that race. We can put a 1 in that race if we feel like it. That number comes behind all of those first numbers. And so this ordering, one race with all the numbers in it, plus another race that's got one number in it, is a set that is infinity plus 1.
Okay.
Now, if we do our cardinal trick, we go back to the infinite hotel, the size is the same. But if we put our ordinal hats on, we do actually have a new character. This new sort of 1 prime, the second 1, is different from all the numbers we've ever seen before because it's behind an infinite number of other numbers.
Okay. Is that like when you save a file on your computer and you save it as the same name and it adds a 2 in parentheses? I mean,
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
That's not bad. You could think about it that way.
Recovered myself a little bit.
So that extra number is included in the original race, right? To get us to infinity, but it's
a different one.
But it's a different one. So he's like Neo in the Matrix. Like, are we really?
So what's going on here is we've just constructed a new set. We've constructed a set that has one part that has an infinite set of values in it, and then it's got this other extra part that's behind all of those.
Okay.
That's got one value in it.
Okay.
So then ordinally, that is the last number.
That is the last number, yes.
Okay.
But it's the next number after infinity. So in counting
Yes.
terms, we've just counted past infinity for the first time.
That's kind of brilliant in its simplicity.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. This isn't going to be the last time we do this.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the training wheels. Where are we going, Noah?
I'm here. I'm going to redeem myself as being a dumbass. It's kind of, to me, it's reminiscent of like a multiverse kind of thing too, where it's like, I'm gonna reference the Spider-Man movie. I don't know if either one of you saw it, but spoiler alert: the 2 prior Spider-Man were in it. It's like, well, there's one, but there's one B and one C.
Yeah. So if you think about those timelines, we conventionally set all movies more or less in the present. But the way that timeline works, they wouldn't have to work that way because they're different universes. So in theory, all 3 of those first Spider-Man movies could come out in the same year in different universes. But then we introduce these universes to each other, and now there's suddenly a meaningful time ordering between them.
Because Tobey Maguire looks old now.
Yes.
All right, okay, so I'm going to confuse myself because in my head I'm already confused with this, Noah. But
I'm trying to confuse Jeremiah.
So we have infinity, right?
Right.
And then we do the second, and we add 1 in.
Yep.
Well, we really didn't go past infinity, right? Because infinity is never ending by definition, right? So now it's just included. Hold
that
infinity.
thought, because I'm going to show you what never-ending infinity looks like eventually.
Okay.
We're not even close to there yet.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Let's
so
rock and roll.
these infinities of these counting numbers are known as countable infinities because we can count them up.
Okay.
Okay. So we've just got a set. It's got an infinite. It's got all the numbers in it. We've got this other set that's behind that set. It's got one number in it.
Okay.
But the rule that we use to count this one, we can count another one. We could put 2 numbers in that set, 3 numbers in that set. And so by that same process, we could put all the counting numbers in that set over again. So we'd now have 2 infinities.
Okay.
So we can now introduce a third race that's behind that second infinity. So 2 infinities plus 1. This is the number that's after 2 infinities.
Okay.
That's next up.
Wait, if we get to 5 of these, isn't that how you take over the universe?
It's actually
We're going to have fun.
7.
Now,
Okay.
first things, remember our infinite hotel.
Yes.
2 infinities, same size as 1 infinity. So cardinality wise, we haven't broken anything yet.
Correct.
We can map everybody from all of these things onto one of our infinite race sets. But we still have all these weird objects. The person who's coming in 458th in the third race, say.
Okay.
Or 702nd in the second race.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them are way, way, way infinitely behind the guy that came in trillionth in the first race.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so 3. 1, 2, 3 infinities. We can just start counting with infinities now. We can just 4
Okay.
infinities, 5 infinities. And we know that when we start counting infinities, we've got this trick. Right. Where we could just have an infinite set of these things. We can
Correct.
we've got our infinite set of counting numbers. We can just label all these suckers.
So we can have an infinity amount of infinities.
Correct.
Okay.
So the ordinal description of that is basically infinity squared.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So now we come to our first question. Is infinity squared a bigger cardinality or the same cardinality as regular infinity?
It's the same.
Okay. So
No,
you've got a
kinda-
matching algorithm?
Well, I think I break it down simply in my head. The first thought is 1 times 1 is 1. Infinity times infinity is infinity. Because right? I mean,
yeah, but
infinity
2 times 2 is
encompasses
4.
that. But
Well,
I think you
remember,
broke it down.
we need to do our cardinality trick. We need a matching algorithm. We need some way that if you were running that front desk of the Infinite Hotel,
Yeah, not
and
unless
an infinite number of buses that each had an infinite number of people on them showed up, you'd be able to give all of them rooms.
no, they would have to share rooms. Infinite squared, right? Infinity squared.
Okay.
there'd be
So
2
Jeff says that infinity squared is bigger than infinity. Jeremiah, we still don't have an answer from you.
no,
well, you say
infinity
it's
is
the same.
He
infinity.
said 1
That's the
times
same.
1 is 1.
No,
1
I'm just
times
saying.
1 equals 1. That
And if he's
logic
right-
is impeccable. That's absolutely true. Sadly, totally unrelated to what's going on. Unfortunately, you are correct.
Ah, yes.
Infinity squared is really just the same size as infinity.
Look, I described it horribly, but the idea in my head is that infinity.
I still say 2 times 2
Look,
equals 4.
Infinity encompasses all numbers, so it doesn't matter if infinity has 100 or 200 or 300 or 400. If we're labeling infinity, it's infinity. So infinity times infinity equals infinity.
Okay. Well, the way that you do this, infinity squared, if you think about instead of just one line of numbers going out or 2 lines of numbers going out, this would be an infinite number of lines of numbers going out. So there'd basically be an infinite grid. And so if I start at the origin point of the grid and then take diagonals across, so I start with the first in the first race, and I go to the second in the first race, and then the first in the second race, and then the third in the first race, and the second in the second race, and the first in the third race, and like that across the diagonals, I will create one infinite string that eventually matches up with every single one of those.
I should have thought about
Hey,
Loki and the infinite timeline.
Are we talking about string theory right now, Noah?
No, we aren't.
I heard
We're talking about
strings.
something
I heard
that's real.
strings and infinity. I had to ask.
Ah, we're talking about something real. Thank you, Noah.
Oh, I like that. Nice. Beautiful.
But this infinity squared thing, nothing special about that. Our basic counting rule still works. We can pop in another race after this. So we can have infinity squared plus 1, or infinity squared plus infinity, or infinity squared plus 7 infinity,
Or yeah.
or infinity squared plus infinity squared.
Yes.
2 infinity squared.
Infinity and beyond.
And then you could have like 3 infinity squared. And once you get to 3 of something, we know we can just keep counting. So we can get to infinity cubed.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
Anyone feeling like maybe this is bigger yet?
1 times 1 times 1 is still 1. So Jeremiah.
but
as I told you, well, that's true. That has nothing to do with why infinity squared was the same size.
Look, you don't have to show your work, Jeff. I had the answer right. That's all that matters. You don't have to show your work. Okay, so now we're up to infinity cubed.
Right.
Okay, what's the question with that?
Is it bigger? Is it bigger than infinity yet?
I wouldn't think so based on the answer from infinity squared. I would think it continues.
Yep. And yeah, the same kind of thing works. You can sort of take these triangular planar slices. Each one of them will be a finite thing you can track down. But if you'll notice, we just did infinity and then infinity squared and then infinity cubed. So we got our 1, 2, 3 motif back again.
Okay. Now
which
we're
means
ordinal.
We can now keep ordinaling up on the exponent. Infinity to the 4th, 5th, infinity to the infinity.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we've got this ordinal set.
Okay. With you.
Infinity to the
infinity to the
plus
infinity.
There's first infinity, second infinity, third infinity, fourth infinity.
Right. That was just infinity squared. So then we take that concept of counting up all the infinities, all the infinity squareds, and then all the infinity cubes, and all the infinity to the 4ths and 5ths and 6ths. And every time we do that, we get an extra value of infinity. We get up to infinitely dimensional, infinite sets. Are we?
Oh, come on! There we go. Oh, it's backwards on the damn camera.
That was good. So are we at infinity to infinity? Are we bigger than infinity yet?
No.
And you're wrong.
Oh, wow. Okay. How did we go wrong here? Because infinity equals infinity. So even if it's times infinity, never mind.
No, this one is uncountable.
Okay.
So it turns out that at this stage of matters, we've now gone to a completely different character of infinity, where there isn't any way for us to match up. And there's a trick called diagonalization that shows us this. Okay. So basically what's going on here is an infinity of infinity to the infinite power is an infinite string of numbers. So let's imagine that there was some way to match every single one of the infinite strings of numbers to some specific number. So the first one matches up to, 1, 2, 3, like infinity. And then the second one matches up to 5, 15, all those numbers times 5. And the third one matches up to something else. And we've got them all in there. So I can do this little trick. I can go down the diagonal. So in the first one, I go into the first position of numbers, and I say, I'm going to pick a number that's different from this number. Let's say it's twice that number.
Okay.
And then I go down the diagonal. In the second one, I take the second thing and its diagonal, take whatever's number there, and I double it. I go down the diagonal again. The third number of the third infinite string, double that. And I just go all the way down the diagonal I build a brand new set of infinite numbers. And this set of infinite numbers isn't in the list anywhere, because in at least one position, it's different, because I defined it to be.
Okay.
So when we get to infinity, we've actually broken cardinality. We've gone to the next level of cardinality.
Okay.
And the name for that next level of cardinality, so the countable infinities we've been dealing with, are all of cardinality Aleph. That's the term for infinite cardinalities, 0. When we break through, this is Aleph 1.
Aleph.
Yes. It's sort of a Hebrew-looking N. It's the first character of the Hebrew alphabet.
Oh, that's when you break through cardinality.
Yes, we've broken through cardinality. We've actually gotten to a bigger kind of infinity.
Okay. Way off topic here, but
So-
Noah, how good are you at Sudoku?
I don't actually play Sudoku.
No,
That's
I think it would bore you.
That's probably as hard for him as it is for us to like blink.
When you can visualize numbers in this point, I vision that a Sudoku puzzle doesn't take long. So we have broken infinity.
Okay, so Aleph, was that the word?
Yes.
This infinite pattern you can create through the infinity to the infinity squared. I feel like that's. I don't know if this isn't going to make sense. Probably.
Well, give it a try.
Speak it out.
You can control it and manipulate it any way you want, right? I mean, because you were saying you do this to this power or this, double this number. So you could do it any way you want, but
Right.
wouldn't it also be infinite possibilities?
Yeah. Well, see, this gets into this structure of hyper infinities gets into fundamental things about what we can and cannot do, and these higher infinite structures have very different shapes, if you will. Whereas the shape of the countable infinities all looks very much like points and sort of that kind of thing. Now that we've gotten to this first uncountable infinity, we're getting to things that look a lot more like lines and spaces. And there's crazier things to come, because as you just mentioned, infinity to the infinity, we've sort of algebraized this. There's a lot of stuff we can do with that. In addition to what you had on your pad there, we can take this set we built, this infinity to the infinity set, and we can run another race after it and have infinity to the infinity plus 1, which is exactly the same size, cardinality, as infinity to the infinity, but it has this extra element that's totally different from any element we've ever seen before. This element comes after an uncountable infinity. We have never seen anything come behind an uncountable infinity before.
So, like, I get where all this is going in the theory behind, at least a little bit, but is there a practical usage for this? No, I mean, is there anything in day-to-day life or real world that would bring me outside of, I mean, is it in scientific studies or what? Like, when would you get to infinity and infinity?
I actually managed to destroy a argument on my patent on the basis of this particular piece of mathematics.
Okay.
So there was something called the Lang patent, which was like an 800-page long mathematical treatise in which these guys, the lead of whom was a guy named Lang, patented every single kind of parimutuel, like horse racing style betting system they could imagine. Okay. And then, in order to cover their bases, they went on to claim that they would also claim every single parimutuel system that could have up to a countably infinite set of betting pools in it.
And you went above accountable.
Well, my patent, while it does contain the word parimutuel, is dealing with things in functional space, and so it actually belongs to not Aleph 0, which is what they were claiming, or even Aleph 1, which you guys have now started to tackle, but actually a couple levels up from that. And that means that their patent declared that it was completely irrelevant to my patent. And so essentially, rather than having to go through a belabored 800-page counterproof, I could point simply at that one exact line and say, yep, they said it had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
It's
So-
it's always beneficial to be smarter.
100%. Now you're talking about betting pools. When I hear that, all of a sudden I went to horse racing. So are they using this theory?
That patent was sold to two groups. One was the CME Group, which is a conglomerate that owns the what used to be called the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And the other one was the Hong Kong Jockey Club.
Okay. Wow. See, it is, look, to kind of go back to what we were talking about before, I love conversations like this because truly for guys like me who aren't math minded, I do understand and appreciate that numbers rule the world. Everything that I do, from clicking this pin to looking at you on this video, involves some numerical equation and touch, right? And it's way less brain hurty if I don't think about that. But the truth of the matter is it's there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And where these hyper infinities come in is that not only are these sort of practical things all reducible to numbers, but in fact, math itself can in certain ways be all reduced to numbers. And this sort of stack of ordinals is the structure required to be able to describe the numbers that math can be reduced to. Because as Jeff, you realized, we're basically putting functional forms into numbers. We have numbers that, rather than just being like a 7 or a 15, and it's like that's how many apples he has and that's how many bottle caps she has, these are now numbers that contain functional forms. Infinity to the infinity plus 1, that could be thought of as similar to x to the x plus 1, or infinity squared plus 5 infinity plus 7 could be a polynomial. And so these structural things give us entirely new kinds of functions that can do things that can't happen any other way.
Noah, when did you realize that you had this, I don't know, this passion, or did you just saw things differently in numbers? I mean, was there a time or a point that just like you were like, yeah, this is it, and you gravitated to that? Like, how did that come about?
It's basically a long series of lazy, easy choices. Is where this came from. I did eventually sort of find out what was hard about mathematics, but it didn't happen in grade school, and it didn't happen in middle school, and it didn't happen in high school.
It happened at infinity times infinity.
This one wasn't so bad, but yeah, the first time I bounced off group theory, that was quite a chore. But something about my psychological makeup, things that are logically coherent just make sense to me, and they're kind of natural. And there's the fact, I appreciate the beautiful fact of things fitting together well. Like there's an entire genre of satisfying video that exists where, it's like bicycle spokes going around and like the chain fitting into the chain, and people watch this and love it. I know that this exists. I've never understood like what the joy is for those things, but these things happening in your own brain when you sort of realize that something like 4 times 6 is equal to 1 minus 1 less than 25, because 5 squared is 25, and 4 and 6 are each 1 different from 5. Or
Okay.
that 3 times 7 is 21, because 21 is 4 less than 25, and 3 and 7 are each 2 different, and 2 squared is 4, and so 5 squared minus 4 is 21. And that just keeps happening across the entire range, and so there's this sort of parabolas intersecting parabolas space that you can visualize across the entire XYZ cubic. That's a beautiful thing, basically.
Jeremiah, he's a genius, like
Look at
hyper genius.
Right.
Noah said to me that I was like, my IQ scores, I was like borderline genius. He's way smarter than me.
So, right. Now, look, this next question will demonstrate a quality that either people think is cute about me or they really hate. I'm a man child.
I don't think he's done with his lecture, so you better hurry up.
Well, it's going to be quick, but I'm just saying, for someone like
I think I'm taking the lead based on this.
You are. But I'm petrified. My son is 7 years old, and he's getting ready to get into deeper math, okay? But, like, what is someone like you who thinks this way and goes to that level of mathematics? What are your thoughts on Common Core? I mean, is it a way to be taught?
Still have that up there?
Yeah, no, they're going to bring this through, and when he gets to like doing Common Core, I'm going to have a hard time with this.
I'm extremely disappointed with mathematical education in general.
Okay.
My personal feeling is that it should be vastly broader, with sort of individual units. I was very fortunate to be exposed to, say, set theory when I was in first and second grade, and recursion, although they didn't understand that they were supposed to be teaching us about recursion and what was important about recursion, so I didn't really get that until 20 years later. But you know, my sort of basic thing is that the mathematical curriculum was reset by the Sputnik disaster. And so we sort of built this math curriculum around everybody needs to be a rocket scientist. And it's not that being a rocket scientist is bad, or that calculus is worthless to non-rocket scientists. But there's a lot more of math than that. Most of the advances of the last 150 years in math have been discovering how to connect apparently very disparate ideas together in order to prove important ideas and new techniques for doing things. And lots of the mathematically inclined have severe deficiencies, in some areas of mathematics. And so, you know, I think we're probably leaving some Gausses on the table somewhere. And those guys are so valuable that it's a bad idea not to find them if they happen to be around. What I'd like to see for mathematical instruction would be sort of shorter units that would be a much broader variety of thing, and normalization of failure. I think people should be shown the hard stuff, and sort of learn that they're not good at it at that level, but that it does exist and it can be done. The only fear is that there's ways to manipulate that as well, for common understanding. There was actually the Soviets. They had specialized math academies for their hardcore, like, brilliant minds that they were identifying, but they also had a lot of political and ethnic reasons for not promoting certain people other than others. And so there's a famous group of problems. There's a lot of them. There's way more, but they wouldn't give everybody the same test, and they had tests of math problems with hard to find simple solutions. So you could give some young brilliant kid this, as a geometry genius, this geometry problem, watch them fail it, and then draw a couple of lines in this completely non-obvious way and be like, oh, that's the solution, and make them feel like an idiot when you sent them back. So everything's manipulable. That's all bad. But yeah, I think that more breadth would be very important. And the upside for that is that the internet exists, and the breadth, let me tell you, it's all there. It's all free. And so, yeah, if he has any proclivity towards any part of reason, send him that way. And I can also recommend Raymond Smullyan, who's a logician that wrote puzzle books.
Oh,
Jeremiah, he can just FaceTime my son. He finished 4th grade, and it's been 2 or 3 teachers who have said, I can't teach him anything in math because he's well beyond what I'm capable of teaching.
I do have a couple more rabbits to pull out of the hat here. So
let's pull them out.
I got to officially win this competition because I feel like I've got a math advantage over you, Jeremiah.
You do.
So we got the infinity plus 1.
Yep.
Which means pretty obviously we can get infinity times infinity and infinity squared. And eventually we'll be able to work our way up to infinity to the infinity to infinity.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be a left 2. So
cardinality can break infinite amounts of time.
Remember our rule. Once we've done 3 of something, we know what to do next, right? So there's no left 3, there's no left 4, there's no left 5. These are all cardinality breaking changes.
Yes. See?
But remember, numbers have a cardinal and an ordinal value. So after we get to a left infinity, there's a left infinity plus 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
So ordinal is always going to rear its ugly head.
Which means that every single step we took along this ordinal path is laying out a future path of infinities, of longer ordinal paths for us to run through, each one of which will be associated with some infinity, every step of which we'll have to walk through, every step of which will give us a brand new infinity on our forward path.
So infinity is ever evolving. It's constantly changing.
No. It's just way bigger than you can think about, because this particular path, counting up to 3, figuring out how to count up to that 3, doing the infinity thing, cycling that, we just did that 3 times.
Okay.
Each time bringing us back to that same process. You can keep following it. You can walk that path and all the way to the edge of where your brain will stop walking the path. Because every step you take is more difficult than the step before. Because you actually have to structure what this infinite thing looks like in order to take that step. And so if you work at this,
there's infinite paths, so there's infinite infinity, but you can always choose your own adventure.
Not exactly. So there are some variations in how you want to structure this, but this is a singular path. It's just that it's receding from you. So the amount of work there is yet to do is greater the further you go on.
Mm.
And so you can always tread this particular logical sequence until you get to a problem that's too hard for your mind to cope with.
And
then you call Noah.
so look, kind of like pi can be put out to the nth derivative, right? I mean, it just keeps going on and on forever as long as you can continue.
Pi is a transcendental number. Yes, it's an infinite sequence.
Right. So that's sort of what we're talking about here. Is it ends for me when I can't do it anymore?
Yes,
but
we're
someone
talking
else
about.
can take it further.
Actually, there's a point at which, in spite of the fact that there's now a transfinitely big problem in front of us, none of us will be able to take it further.
And I mean, pi, is that an example of that? It literally will
No,
never...
no, no, no. Pi. So pi in general, actually, we have in base 8 or any other base of power of 2 greater than 8. A formula exists that will take in a number and plug out the direct value of pi at that location. So in that sense, the entire infinite sequence of pi is encapsulated within a single formula, which is known to humans. So there's a thing.
Yeah.
So pi has been solved.
Effectively.
For certain values of the word solved, yes.
Okay. So, okay. Do we have another step to go with this, or can I ask another completely irrelevant question?
That's it. The step, once you close out the step of realizing that this is an exercise you can do on your own to reach the forefront of your own mind, and anybody can do this. You won't all get to the same point. It's very, very difficult to get to there, but you can do that, and it's pretty mind expanding to do. And so that's the cycle of counting past infinity.
So I'm thinking about this. Have you ever seen the movie Sliding Doors? And the movie's
Yes.
not that great, but
The
is that
concept's
not
awesome.
to an extent? So in Sliding Doors, the Sliding Doors moment is a kid holds his toy in front of her and holds her up so she misses the train. And then 2 alternate universes break out. So in this is how my brain is grasping it, and it's probably wrong. Like, she could also have broken her ankle and stumbled down the stairs and died. She could have also broken her ankle on the second step, and so, or, you know, an infinite number of infinite possibilities could have happened, and then from that possibility, an infinite number of infinite possibilities could have happened.
She could have pushed the kid in front of the train.
Right. So you're thinking essentially of a fractalized time path. That's not really what's going on with the counting past infinity thing. What's going on with counting past infinity is, imagine you're climbing a ladder and the rungs are paced so that they get further and further apart.
Okay.
And every time you grab a rung, a new ladder is put on top of the ladder for every rung that you've gone past.
Okay.
And the rung distances on that ladder are qualitatively weirder than the rung differences on every one that you've gone past. So this is a way that you can climb, but it gets harder and harder to climb. And the further you climb, the less close to the top of the ladder you are.
It's numerical quicksand. Numerical
Yes.
quicksand. Yeah. Okay. So my question
for Jeremiah.
My question doesn't go nearly as deep as Jeff's. I just, again, childlike wonder. How good are you at blackjack?
I actually hate card games. I did train myself to count cards a little bit, but I don't really play.
I think now we're not going to punish each other from this episode because we need to make that deal beforehand. You're our first guest. In the future, I think we will punish each other based on who loses the episode. I don't know if you have any questions that you want to throw at us before you declare, but I would like you to declare who and you should probably
grasp this concept. Who has a better grasp?
Who's the winner out of the dads?
Who's the winner? Well, Jeremiah got the first question right.
He did. With a
Although
false
not
premise.
for the right
flawed
reason.
Logic, with flawed logic, but
not
it was
for
right.
the right reason.
Right.
And then both of you got the second question wrong.
Yeah.
But Jeff, you jumped to in the form part of the question, and you jumped to the infinity tracking bit, although you went off on the deep end on this sliding doors nonsense.
I did, yeah. I lost a little
Talking
points
teddy
for that.
bears. I mean, I don't know.
So I'd say it's pretty close, but I got to give it to Jeff.
Yes.
All right. Hey, look, I'm just glad that I, even maybe by dumb luck, got a piece of this. So
It
I
was
understand. It is kind of cool, and I can see how someone becomes a mathematical. I think, what did you say, Jeff? It's like your hobby, right? It's your
recreational mathematician.
I can see how that happens because it is a constant puzzle, and it's constantly making your brain work to play scenarios, and I can see where that goes. So my knowledge or understanding of it has expanded, and I appreciate that so much, Noah. I appreciate you taking the time to do that with us.
Mine too. And Noah, I think my biggest weakness, you might agree, is that I try to associate it with movies too much. How many Marvel references did I make before that awful sliding doors reference?
I don't know. I threw in the Infinity Stones, so I mean, but that was like low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
We're talking about infinity. How do we not enter into the Marvel universe?
Noah, our recommendation this week is to go to and follow and go to whatever website that you would recommend, because you are a genius and we're just two dads who drink too much. Although again, I will point out I won. So Noah, where can the audience find you?
So I've got a website at coordisc.com, CORDISC. And as we mentioned during the thing, I'm working on a patent that actually needed knowledge of transfinity to move forward. And it's a patent on upgrading how economics works and making the markets actually efficient and effective again.
Yeah, I know about commodity markets because I had this guy. God damn, I don't know how a camera works though. It's the opposite.
You're losing points,
on my
Jeff.
podcast, and he explained it to me like I was a kindergartner because that's what I needed.
I will say this, like Noah, this is the closest I've been to a beautiful mind, and the fact that you were able to dumb that down to myself and Jeff to an explainable level.
How dare you?
Speaks volumes. Speaks volumes. So literally, man, it's obvious that you have such a grasp on that, but not just that, but a way to communicate it to others. That it's absolutely entertaining and fun. So I appreciate all the effort and time, man.
Well, thank you. But this is not my work or my discovery. This is a gem inside mathematics. I borrowed virtually every word that I said to you guys from other papers that I've read. The Infinite Hotel is a piece of pedagogy that's used usually actually to teach people that there's nothing past infinity, to get them used to how to fit multiple infinities into one. That sort of goes to the thing I was talking about with pedagogy in general. I think there are opportunities, and there are things like Zeno's paradox, where infinity rears up and kind of demonstrates some weird things about the structure of space, which we with quantum physics can now confirm is true, but is actually philosophically demonstrable that it must be true. Because if it wasn't, then weird things would happen. So once again, I think there's ways to break down the entry levels of a lot of these math concepts that are generally introduced at very high levels to people, much as we have done the work to introduce counting and arithmetic to people, which are also very high level and have this whole back end that most people never get anywhere close to, but is there and is so powerful. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities, and that's more or less what I do is sort of try to find these entry points and pick them up and internalize them and hook them together and sort of build up my toolbox of new ways to think about things and different approaches that have been shown to be powerful and work and everything else.
Dude, phenomenal.
Yes. I grasped some of this, which means Noah has a gift for reaching down and pulling us up.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right, folks. What's the name of this show?
Show.
Oh, started halfway through.